Welcome to the 2020 Go-Kart Championship. Round number 1 of 5 really interesting rounds this year, starting at Filching Manor, where this championship started back in 2014. After this, we're going to Team Sport Brighton for the second round. Bayford Meadows will host the third round. Then Q Leisure and Lyd will host a back-to-back with an interesting finale. Let's have a look at the grid, the opening round of the season. I'm starting on pole position and collect the 8 points along with it. My dad second and the 6 points with that. Tom in third place. John in fourth place with 5 and 4 points respectively going to them for those qualifying positions. Fifth place on the grid is Chris and he collects 3 points, as does Greg for starting in 6th. And then last place on the grid is Jake, 7th place on the grid, and he scores 2 points for that. So it wasn't the quickest times in qualifying that we've ever done. I start on pole position with a 29.469. I know I can personally get into the 28s, as can Tom L. Pretty good time for my dad though, getting under 30 seconds with a 29.997. So we look to the lights for the first race of the season. 4 races here today. Points also available for the fastest laps. 1 through 7 will all score points for their fastest lap. Just depends what order, and the lights are out and away we go. I get a decent start from pole position. Tom does as well from third position. He goes straight away up into second, and then up to third comes Chris with a great start from him up into turn 1. And John down the inside as well. He gets past, and my dad just losing positions all over the place here. Unfortunately, a bad start for him. He's dropped down to 6th position here. So unfortunately for him, he's lost quite a lot of time here at the start, but does make up a position there. I think that is on Greg down the inside on him. So 1 position back, more to be gained. On board with John here, he's right now behind Chris to try and get third position in this race. A decent start from John. He didn't really lose any positions. He obviously lost 1 to Chris, but then gained 1 on my dad. And onto the top hairpin. Chris is getting a bit sideways. John's trying to look round the inside, which turns into the outside. It doesn't work out for him there. It's quite a tight and twisty track if you've never seen Filching Manor in these videos before, so it's quite tricky to overtake. The best place to look for an overtake is the top hairpin. But John does have a bit of a weight disadvantage over the majority of the field here, so he's going to be looking to slipstream here and try and get the overtake into this top hairpin. So on board with Tom here, you can see I'm in the distance there. I've already pulled out a couple of seconds. That was one of the best sort of opening couple of laps I've ever put in here. You can see the distance I put in on Tom. I don't have a massive pace advantage over him. He didn't have a particularly smooth qualifying session, which meant he started third, not second, where he probably at least should have been, maybe even pole position. But I really nailed the first couple of laps, which helped me out here. And John is trying to look for a move on Chris here and try and get third place. That'd be great for him to get on the podium in the first race of the season. He's got the move done down the inside. And then we're on board with my dad, who's following John through here up to the top hairpin. He's got the slipstream as well. Chris doesn't have that on the outside. Good move there, down the inside, up to 4th position for my dad, and he's right behind John there for a podium position. He'd at least want to get back on the podium after starting second on the grid and putting in a really good lap time in qualifying. So we'll have the slipstream of John up the straight once again as well, but not the best exit out of the penultimate corner or final corner. Who knows these days, there's so many corners. And now we're on board with myself here for the first time this season. I've got a chin-mounted helmet camera for this one, which I really liked, but unfortunately for some of the races we visit later this season, they did not allow us to have helmet cameras, which kind of sucked unfortunately, and we'll have to look into that for 2021 and beyond. On board with Tom here, you can see he hasn't lost too much time in the preceding laps here, considering we're near the end of this race here, but I did feel like I had really good pace in this first race of the day, and I really wanted to put in some strong lap times. Of course, as I said earlier on, fastest laps all score points as well, so you'll get 8 points for fastest laps, 6 points for second fastest laps, and then you also get 5, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1 for the rest of the top 10 in terms of their fastest laps. It's the same as qualifying as well, so they're weighted the same. You can see on board with my dad here, he's catching up to John as we mentioned earlier on. It's quite close between these two, but there isn't really enough room there for an overtake. Back on board with myself up at the top hairpin. I'm just trying to put in some consistent lap times here, as I said. Try and get that fastest lap, which would be really good. I'm looking to try and get into the 28s here today, but I'm not sure, maybe the track isn't quite as quick as it could be, because as I said earlier on, I could normally get a bit closer to the 28s in qualifying. For me, at 29.4, maybe a little bit off the pace, but of course it's very kart dependent. So Filching Manor, as I mentioned early on in this video, is sort of the place where this whole championship started, so it's always great to come back. But the future is a little bit uncertain with all that's going on in the world right now for Filching Manor, so keep your fingers crossed. On board with my dad up to the top hairpin. He's deeper on the brakes than John, but he can't quite get the overtake done around the outside. John knows that my dad's there and he's defending accordingly. Very smart driving there from John, and he'll be looking to try and bring home third place. As I mentioned earlier on, he didn't have the pace in quali really. He was a little bit off what everyone else was doing. It wasn't much. He was only less than half a tenth of a second behind starting third place on the grid and taking Tom's position, but as we mentioned, Tom didn't exactly have the best results in quali. And as I say, we're on board with Tom. He gets past Jake there, who is being lapped. Jake, a little bit rusty from karting, as we mentioned in previous ones in this series. He doesn't come karting too often, so he always takes a little bit of time to get used to it once again. But by the end of the day, he's actually putting in some pretty strong lap times, which was nice to see. On board myself up to the top hairpin, you can see this was sort of late in the day here, so we're coming towards the end of this race and the sun is starting to come down, so we'll see by the end of race number 4 what the conditions are like. And there's a spin at the top hairpin. I think that is Jake possibly here, who, yeah, with the orange parts to his overalls, yeah, he unfortunately has had a bit of a mistake there, and now John is trying to get past him, quite aware that my dad is right behind him here, and we're quite near the end of this race. As you can see, quite evidently my dad's trying to get this overtake done. He's not going to be able to quite do it though, as there's the checkered flag. My dad comes across the line in 4th position, so we'll have a look at the results and see how it all played out. Here is the top 5 from the race. I win that one. Tom is in 2nd. 3rd place goes away of John, so good stuff from him. 4th place my dad, dropping from 2nd on the grid. Chris is 5th place there after another good result from him. 6th place on the road was Greg, and 7th place was Jake. So here we are for the second race of the day. So the starting order for this race is exactly the same as the finishing order from the last one, so the results equal the starting. So I start on pole. 2nd place is Tom, 3rd place is John, 4th place my dad, 5th place is Chris, 6th place Greg, and 7th place is Jake. It's worth mentioning that all of the races are weighted to the same, 15 points for a win, even though there is a reverse grid later on here today. But you don't want to be finishing down the back because the points difference is quite big between first and last. And lights are out and away we go on board with John for this start. Front row gets away quite well, and once again good starts from everyone. 3rd place seems to be an unlucky place to start, as my dad in the first race lost a lot of position. John gets a bad start this time and drops all the way down to 6th. Now on board with Tom here in 2nd position. He's now determined to make sure I don't get away in this one. He's definitely had a better opening lap here. You can see considerably closer, and he'll try and keep in the slipstream. That is important here at Filching Manor. Half of this track is pretty much full throttle, in terms of distance that is, so you want to make sure that you're in that slipstream, and you can see he's definitely close enough to be in that slipstream right now. Now my dad is now trying to battle up to 3rd position here. He's got Chris in front of him, who's a bit leery on the brakes, a bit sideways, and now they're going side by side through here. My dad gets the overtake done, putting the pressure on, getting the overtake. Good stuff from my dad there to get himself into 3rd position, and now see whether he can chase down us two in the lead, because let's not forget, he had a good qualifying session. He started 2nd place on the grid. The first race was a bit of a disaster in terms of a bad start, but in terms of the overall performance, it was pretty decent. He came back to 4th place right behind John, and possibly John might have been holding him up a little bit. We don't really know. Now on board here, back with John, as we mentioned, had a bad start. He's still in 6th position here. He's got Greg directly in front of him, and then Chris just in front of him. So he's got eyes on 4th place here, but my dad is starting to get away in 3rd place here, and John will try and get past these two guys as quickly as possible, as he knows he has the pace advantage. Chris and Greg both driving this track for the first time. They definitely have a weight advantage over my dad and John, it has to be said. And that does make a big difference around Filching, as Chris gets sideways again, gets hit by Greg as they run side by side. Greg gets the overtake done. It's always quite easy to forget that the back of your car is quite a substantial amount wider than the front of it, so sometimes you see those sort of overtakes where you sort of hit the back end of your car on someone. It's unintentional, but it happens quite a bit in rental karting. There we go, a good overtake from John as he gets a little bit sideways, but he'll keep the inside line, he'll keep Chris behind him and keep the position. Now on board with Tom here, he's trying to chase me down, and to be fair to him, he's pretty much kept this gap consistent. That really is pretty impressive, to be fair, considering in the first race he was losing quite a lot of time to me, and so that's really good to see for him, and he'll try and get the fastest lap points as well. I should mention from that first race, the fastest laps were incredibly close actually. My fastest lap in that first race was a 29.189. Tom's was a 29.366, so both showing we could go quicker in quali, especially Tom. He went nearly a second quicker in race 1 than he did in quali, so I think that kind of shows he just messed up qualifying, which obviously happens from time to time. And also John got under the 30s in race number 1 as well. He was on a 29.999. My dad didn't get into the 29s, so he was actually slower in race number 1 than he was in quali. So up to the top hairpin on board with my dad, and he makes a mistake, locks up the brakes and goes across the grass. And we'll see this from the following angle, that John actually makes up a position because Greg spins in front of him, and John's right in the battle for the podium once again. It's all got on. John's gone his way from 5th position at the start of this lap to seeing 3rd place right in front of him. So really good stuff from John here to just sort of capitalise on the moment, and he's going to try and get past my dad here, who's having a look around here because he probably expected to lose a position there and somehow didn't, but now they're side by side up to the top hairpin. My dad sees the overlap, he doesn't move across into the braking zone, and John in the space of a lap has gone from 5th to 3rd in the middle of a race, which doesn't really happen too much unless there's a big crash, and there wasn't really. It was a bit of a spin from my dad and a bit of a spin from Greg, and it's caused that to happen. So on board with Tom, he's now trying to get past Jake, who is lapping for the first time in this race up to the braking zone at the top hairpin. He's managed to do that down the inside, and once again you can see the gap has not gone up to myself really in the lead of this race. Maybe by half a second or so when getting past Jake there. Tom wasn't so lucky as I was. I just got him on the straight. Tom had to sort of back out of it, and that obviously lost them a bit of time there, but nonetheless there's still some time in this race to go, and there's still a chance he could close on me, especially if we catch the battle for 3rd, 4th, 5th positions, which we see there's been a bit of drama so far in this race. So John is now into 3rd position. He's come back like my dad did in the first race. He's sort of come back to battle for a podium now. John has gone 6th on the first lap of the race up to 3rd, and he's starting to pull away from my dad now, who's struggling a bit now in 4th position and might be wary of 5th place and 6th place behind him, Greg and Chris. So it'll definitely be worth looking an eye out for them around the lap. They don't have onboard cameras, neither does Jake, just 4 cameras available for us here today for the video. But nonetheless, John's doing a good job here. He's pulling away from my dad, and he'll be very happy with this. I mean, quietly confident maybe going to the reverse grids that he can nick a win here today. So up to the top hairpin, you can see he's stretching out his hands. The thing is with Filching Manor, it's a very bumpy track, so you do sort of start getting cramp in your hands, so you need to stretch them out from time to time, especially when the races like they are for us are back to back to back to back. So my dad is doing his best to close in on John here, who hasn't had the best of laps, to be fair. My dad has closed down this margin and is looking to possibly get past him here, but the checkered flag is out. Myself and Tom have already crossed the line. John crosses the line in 3rd place, 4th place for my dad. So there we are, another race over, and let's have a look at the results from that one. Actually, exactly the same as the first one. I win, 2nd place goes to Tom, 3rd place goes to John, 4th place goes to my dad, and 5th place goes to Chris. 6th place goes to Greg, who was actually quite close to Chris at the end of that one, and 7th place on the road was Jake. So race number 3. All of these races always throw up some excitement, but this one will unlikely be different. Lights are out and away we go. John starting in 3rd place, not so unlucky this time. It's not the best start in the world, but he doesn't lose all of the positions down to the back. He's overtaken on the left by Tom, right by Chris, and into turn 1. Gets back up into 3rd place, but I think there's contact in front. Chris spins it, and well, my dad's lost a couple of positions in there as well, and well, a lot's happened there into the first corner of this race number 3. So let's have a quick look at what happened here on board with Tom. So let's go in slow motion here. So John's got back down the inside here. You can see Chris with the red on his suit is in 2nd, but he's gone in a bit too deep, got a bit sideways, half spun it. He's made contact with Tom, who's done well to keep it going in the right direction and stay in 3rd position, but it's caused chaos behind. So back on board with myself here. I had a pretty decent start to this race, and with all the carnage behind, managed to pull out a lead and try and bring home a hat-trick of victories to start the season. Now, I'm very aware this is still quite a long championship. Even though we're only going to 5 venues, it's actually in terms of points, going to be one of the longest championships we have, because I've updated the scoring system to include obviously more points for fastest laps and qualifyings as well. Now, on board with my dad, he's trying to sort of come back here and fight through and try and get some sort of podium. Of course, there was contact on the first lap of the race, which definitely separated out the field. You can see my dad's way back there, and then you got on board here with John in second place. He's way up at the hairpin already, so there's already about 6 or 7 seconds between them two, and even though they started side by side on the grid, the gaps are quite significant now because of all of the carnage at turn number 1. I mean, we're pretty good in this championship, don't normally have too many accidents, but a bit of a half spin there did cause a bit of carnage at turn number 1, but that's the way it is sometimes. So my dad's doing my best here to try and get past Jake, who's got a bit sideways there. I've got to say, really good stuff from Jake. He's improved over this one quite significantly. Quali was a 34.8 and he went down to a 31.8 for his fastest lap, so 3 seconds gained. Up to the top hairpin, Jake's a bit late on the brakes and gets a bit sideways and goes for a spin. So even though I'm singing his praises there in terms of fastest laps, the consistency, of course, is just as important in karting. So talking of consistency, Tom has put in some very consistent laps to close up to the back of John here. As I mentioned earlier on, they weren't too far separated in terms of pace. So this is actually quite interesting to see here whether John can defend. Of course, when you start defending that top hairpin, you're going to be losing time because you get a slow run down the hill. And of course, John is defending that inside line quite aggressively because he wants to keep second position, understandably. So Tom is putting the pressure on here. He's trying to get past John, but John's now done enough laps of Filching Manor that he knows exactly where to place the kart to ensure where he's going. So he looks to the inside, defends the inside line, makes sure there isn't a kart with there, and of course Tom goes to the outside to get a better run down the hill, but gets a little bit squirrely on the brakes, possibly John a bit slower through the corner than he expected, and that meant that Tom had to get on the brakes a little bit harder to make sure he didn't run into the back of him here, but it's quite close, and there's a bit of contact there as he tries to go around the outside, but it doesn't quite work out there for Tom. Aboard myself here, not that far ahead of those two battling for second position. I'm looking ahead. I know at some point I possibly could lap Jake in this race, especially because he has had a half spin. I didn't know that, of course, when I'm driving around, but it does mean that I'm likely to catch Jake in this race and possibly put a lap on him. But nonetheless, I'm just trying to put in consistent fast lap times. As we said earlier on, fastest lap points, I should say, are available. So of course you want to be scoring those. Even though it's 8 points for first, 2nd points for second fastest laps, you know, the championship has come close in the past. They look back to the 2017 season, for example, which was extremely close. Now on board with my dad here, who's still struggling to get past Chris, and then Greg, who's directly in front of him here. As we mentioned before, these two have not driven around this circuit before. Of course, they've now done a few laps, but they're struggling a bit, and as is seen there, Greg gets a bit sideways in braking and spins around and makes contact with my dad. And really good stuff here from Tom. He's putting the pressure on John. There was a little bit of contact, and then John kind of leaves the door open there. I'm not sure why exactly he did so, but nonetheless he'll try and get that overtake once again. I think he possibly thought Tom was already overlapping him here, so didn't want to sort of move across him through a fast corner like that. That of course could be a big accident. So he's tucking in behind him here, and now he's going to get the slipstream. Tom's going to be the one that's defending, and now there's another spin up the top hairpin. This time it's Chris. So Chris and Greg both messing up the top hairpin 2 laps in a row, which means my dad's now up into 4th position in this very spread out race. Up to the top hairpin now on board with John. He's putting the pressure on Tom with that slipstream, and with Tom defending, John's doing a really good job here, really good account for himself, and trying to get back 2nd position in this race. That'd be a really good result for him, even though of course he'll realise he was a bit lucky at the start with the accidents going on around him. To keep up with Tom and do a really good job defending in this race in general, I think he'll be very happy with the performances so far this race weekend. And you can see they're both coming up to lap Jake now. So I've already put a lap on Jake, and now these two are going to try and get past him before the end of this race. Tom defending the inside line up to the top hairpin, hit the apex. Both of them do so, even at slightly different angles, as John takes the wider line through the corner. And on board with Tom here as he tries to get past Jake, he catches him at the worst place, this fast left-hander, and then the following left-right is very hard to get past someone. So Tom is lucky to get down the inside of him there, and it's up to the start-finish line. And whoa, there's contact at the line. Tom didn't quite realise that Jake was still there, I think. And let's have a look at this in replay. So Tom gets a good run out of the final corner to get past Jake. I think he thinks at this point, as he looks right, that Jake is definitely still not on his left. He probably didn't realise Jake had such a good run, so sort of started drifting over to the left and still looking right, and there's contact there. Very unfortunate. Jake was all right there. Quite a big hit for him, but thankfully he was all right there. So, yeah, no malice involved there, and there are the results of race number 3. But great to see that Jake was all right after that one. That was quite a big hit from Tom there, but obviously Tom did not mean that whatsoever, just didn't expect Jake to still be there, which I guess is fair enough when you're lapping someone. Final race of the day, and this one is a reverse grid. So Jake is starting on pole position, Chris starting in second, third place on the grid will be Greg, fourth place on the grid will be my dad. Then after that we have fifth position on the grid, which is John, sixth place on the grid will be Tom, and then last on the grid after winning last time out is myself on 7th. So interesting to see here what happened, because of course Tom will be looking to leave the first round of the season with a victory to make sure there isn't a massive gap in the championship standings. But let's have a look to the lights, the last race of the day, and they go green and away we go. A good start here from Tom, who goes to the middle of the road straight away, gets past John on the right, goes to the overtake of my dad on the left and just squeezes through down to the first corner. It looks like as we go into turn 1, Chris has got a good start up into the lead this race. I get it sideways behind as well. I'm up to, I think this is 5th position behind Jake here, so I've got past my dad and John here, but there's now a person in between myself and Tom, but I get past Jake quite swiftly there and up into 4th position here. I see the gap in front here, trying to make sure that doesn't get too big, because I know at this point Chris and, to be fair, Greg as well, both going quite quickly, considering this is the last race of the day. Of course, they didn't have any experience before they started this event, but now by this point they've got enough laps in to really understand this track and where the braking points are exactly. But saying that, I have closed up to the back of Tom here, who went for an overtake up at the top hairpin. Didn't quite work out for him, so now I'm right behind him looking for his podium position as he is trying to get second place off of Greg here. And you can see he's having a look around here, but Greg gets a really good exit out of the corner. But now Tom, with his more experience of this track, will probably try and get down the inside up to this top hairpin. But Greg defending that inside line, even looking for a move down the inside. Tom, well, there's a bit of a gap there, and he's made sure he's got that one done. So a really good overtake there from Tom. I managed to squeeze past Greg as well. A bit unfortunate for Greg there. He was battling for the lead, looking for an overtake on Chris, but it didn't quite work out for him, and he drops down to 4th place here. So can see back on board with myself here, now on board with Tom. He's looking for the overtake to get himself into the lead of this race, and he's got it on Chris, up into the lead of this one, and I'll be looking to try and follow him through. I've gone down the inside of Chris, and I've got the slipstream of Tom as well. So into the braking zone at the top hairpin, I've managed to secure second position. I'm going to try and put this pressure on Tom here. And John, to be fair to him as well, is right in this battle. He's got past Greg as well already in this race. He's in 4th position. You can see just in front is myself and Tom battling for the lead of this race. And as Chris gets a bit sideways again, not too much, but it's enough for John to capitalise and get into the podium positions once again. Can John score 4 podiums in one day? That'd be really good for him, considering he didn't get top 3 on the grid. To come away with every race on the podium, I think he'll definitely take that. On board with my dad, who goes down the inside of Greg and tried to look down the inside of Chris as well, but couldn't quite pull that one off. That was a little bit too far back, but a nice move there down the inside. It was quite far back, to be fair, but he managed to pull it off late on the brakes and confident as well, and he's managed to do that. And he's going to try and get past Chris. The two will run side by side. Will they through this corner? No, because Chris cuts across, and my dad has to slightly back out of that one to make sure that there isn't an accident. And now Greg, capitalising on that slight lift off, will look to the inside and get the position back. Will he? But that gets a bit sideways and doesn't quite manage to turn to the corner. And if we go back to the battle for the lead, it's close. I look down the inside of Tom, doesn't quite work out, but this has brought John back into it. I mean, I was mentioning this earlier, he doesn't quite have the pace of us. Both mine and Tom's fastest lap at this point were both 29.1s. We'll reveal who's quicker at the end. John's was only a 29.8 by this point, but he was very quick in this last race of the day and keeping with us. So a fantastic job here, and I get a bit squirrely under the brakes here, and Tom defending, myself attacking, doing strange lines, is all helping John with a slight pace deficit really keep up here. And let's be real here, he's got a weight disadvantage, as we've mentioned in the series before, and in karting that means a lot. Around Filching Manor that means a lot as well, and the fact he's keeping with us I think is testament to Johnny. He's driving really well here today, and he'll be looking to score a podium at worst. He could even go for a victory in this last race of the day, and considering he wasn't right at the front of the reverse grid, he'll definitely take that. He's really had to fight in this one to get into third position. It hasn't been easy. He had a bad start, dropped down I think to last place on the first lap of this race, and he's managed to fight his way up to third place, so massive fair play to John. He's done a great job. Now, I'm trying to put the pressure on Tom here. You can see he's going defensive straight away out of that last corner. John has lost a bit of a gap here, but he normally gains that down this straight here up to this top hairpin. As I will take a different line, he'll take the wide line as well, and we both get better runs down the hill because of it. Tom obviously taking the tight line. We slow all the way down the hill, and it's really helping John sort of keep within distance here. And now back on board with my dad, who's still stuck behind Greg here, because Greg, of course, got back past him down the inside at the hairpin a couple of laps ago, and my dad trying to sort of force Greg into an error, but it's not really working today. Greg's doing a really good job here. He's not really bottling under the pressure. He's really getting sort of used to these karts quite quickly, so fair play. And my dad is looking to the inside here, and I think he sort of comes out of a throttle on the outside there, does Greg. You can see he sort of looked across and then sort of slowed up a little bit. So my dad had got the move done down the inside and up to 5th position that will be as well. So good stuff, and even better stuff, because that's the last lap of the race. A move on the last lap. Tom crosses the line to win his first race of the season. He's very happy with that one. I'm not so happy with finishing second, but considering I managed to get pole 3 wins to start off the weekend, I'm not too disappointed. In general, I think a good weekend for myself, good weekend for Tom as well. He'll be happy to get the victory, and the pace was so close between us. I'll reveal the results in terms of fastest lap points in a minute, but great stuff from Tom. He drove a very, very well driven defensive race, and he managed to bring home the 15 points for that. I was obviously second. Third place came home John, so he'll be happy with that. 4 podiums. Good stuff from him, to be perfectly honest. I wouldn't have expected. He thought that was going to happen earlier on. It looks like Jake's kart there has had a bit of an issue. But nonetheless, let's have a look at the race results. Race number 4. Tom wins it. I'm in second place. Third place goes to John. 4th place to Chris. His best result of the weekend so far as well. So good stuff from Chris. My dad comes home 5th place after struggling early on in that race. To sort of come back and get a result is something. And if we look at the championship standings, I'm on 73 points ahead of Tom, who's on 62. John is on 49, my dad is on 40, and Chris is on 34. Now, I was mentioning about the fastest lap of the day because, of course, that gives you 8 points over 6 advantage in the standings. And, well, it was incredibly close. My fastest lap was a 29.164, and Tom's fastest lap was a 29.189. Incredibly close there, and it was really good to see how close it was. My fastest lap of the day came in the second race. I think so did Tom's. Obviously that was an optimum race for some reason, but it's really good to see both of us so close. And John's fastest lap was down to a 29.550 in that last race, so fair play to him. Greg also got a faster lap than my dad, but both of them in the 29s as well. We also want to see the bottom part of the standings here. Greg on 32 points, Jake on 24. But overall, great to see everyone back for the 2020 Go-Kart Championship season. Lots more drivers will be coming to join us this year. Of course, it's worth mentioning all of these races were done before all of the pandemic and everything that happened in the world. Ideally, this was going to be my first season in motorsport as we've sort of broadcasted in this channel, so the reason was a condensed sort of pre-season testing which was going to end in the middle of February. Thankfully we did do it early, because otherwise we wouldn't have had a Go-Kart Championship in 2020 most likely, so that's the way it went, and thankfully we have a 5-round championship to show you on this channel, which will be seen over the next sort of 3 or 4 months. But nonetheless, I want to say, as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching the episode on the channel again, and please remember to like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you are new to my channel, and most of all, stay safe. Goodbye.